Oh, I'm gonna put my controller. Afternoon, morning, morning, everybody. I decided to come on. I got time to do 2 shows today. A lot of intel. Come out again. Just we had a long show. I couldn't get the stuff from yesterday out. So I want to catch up on everything. Tomorrow I'll be busy. I won't have a show in the morning tomorrow. Lo said must be at work. Must be listening. So, a lot of people be at work when I come on early, but I'll still do the show. So let's go ahead and jump right into everything. As I'm saying, a lot of people's at work, so they'll be listening. So go ahead and do a 4-part clip at the White House. Lay on the couch, Chico. Go lay on the couch. I gotta log in again. Chico. Clara. No.
90% is below the ground. You think you know this
Anybody
house?
see this?
You don't.
4-parter?
To understand the heart of power, we have to go back 233 years to the mud. George Washington stood right here. He chose a swamp for a capital, but he saw a masterpiece.
Chico.
No machines, just muscle.
Come here.
October 1792, the first earth
Yeah.
is moved by
Yeah.
hand. The architect, James Hoban. His prize for this design, $500 and a gold medal.
The cornerstone, laid in secret by the Freemasons. To this day, nobody knows exactly where it is.
This house was built by everyone, enslaved laborers, immigrants, and locals. Every inch of this foundation was won with human sweat. The stone came from Akia Creek. It's soft and porous, making it easy to carve, but incredibly heavy to move. Expert stonemasons were brought in from Scotland. They were the best in the world. Every single flower on the exterior was hand-carved. It took years to finish the ornaments, burning oyster shells to make lime for the mortar. The heat was intense, and the smell was unbearable.
By 1795, the largest stone house in America is finally taking shape. It's becoming a giant in a land of cabins.
The interior skeleton is all wood. It's beautiful, but it's also the building's greatest weakness. This wood is a ticking time bomb, a 1790s waterproofing technique, molten lead. It's deadly for the workers, but it's the only way to keep the rain out. Glass was a luxury. Most of it was imported from Europe, and half of it broke before it ever reached DC.
Horsehair, that's what keeps this plaster from cracking. It's 1798, and after 6 years, we're finally almost done.
The Grand Staircase. It was built for kings, but meant for a president. Even now, it's the most important climb in the country.
It's November 1800. The house is freezing, and the paint isn't even dry. But the president is arriving today. November 1st, President John Adams arrives. Out of 36 rooms, only 6 are actually
How you
livable.
feeling,
Welcome home.
Jared?
First Lady
Serious?
Abigail Adams had to use the East Room
I have a
to
lot
dry
of
the
short
family's
videos I
clothes,
want to be sharing.
cooking for a nation over an open flame.
I'll be on
No
twice,
running
mate.
water, no switches, just wood, iron, and fire. The East Room wouldn't be fully finished for another 20 years.
Anybody see this?
For now, it's just a cavern of empty promises.
Washington wanted an oval room to greet guests, a space with no corners to hide in.
Water had to be carried in by hand, one bucket at a time. No pipes, no faucets. Why white? It wasn't about style. They used a thick lime wash to seal the porous stone. Jefferson arrives in 1801. Jefferson adds the first wings. They weren't for offices back then. They were for ice, meat, and wine, the hidden machinery of the mansion.
1804. Finally, the first indoor toilet. No more midnight walks to the garden. Jefferson was a total tech nerd for his time.
The wild swamp is slowly becoming a landscape. For the first time, the house doesn't just sit on the land. It belongs to it.
It's 1810. It's finally finished. But in just 4 years, it's all going to burn. August 1814. The British are coming for this house. The peace of the last decade is over.
They ate Dolly Madison's dinner, toasted their king with the president's wine, and then prepared to burn it all. The furniture, the books, the history, all gone in seconds.
It's not.
Okay, part 2.
The timber skeleton becomes an oven. The heat is so intense that the stone actually begins to crack. A freak storm actually put out the fires. Nature tried to save the house.
The interior is gone. Only the stone shell remains, cracked and smelling of smoke.
Some wanted to move the capital to Cincinnati, away from British ships. But if the Republic was to survive, this house had to rise again. James Hoban is hired again. He's older now, but he has to rebuild his masterpiece from the grave of the original. They couldn't get the stains out. The fire was too hot, and the smoke went too deep. The house was permanently scarred.
This is the moment. They painted it white to hide the fire damage. The White House is born.
A new roof, but the same dangerous wood design. They're rebuilding the house exactly as it was, trapping a wooden forest inside a stone box. The heating system of 1815. More fireplaces mean more smoke, but it's the only way to keep the president warm. Monroe wants it more elegant than before. The house isn't just a home anymore, it's a statement. French style is the new goal.
The house is becoming a palace. We've moved past simple survival. This is the era of good feelings, and it's covered in gold.
Security. After the fire, they realized the house needed real protection. These gates are a reminder of what happened in 1814. Grandeur returns to the Blue Room. This isn't just a ceiling, it's a crown for the most important room in the house. Stronger than 1792, but still just wood and stone.
High-tech 1817 communication. One pull-up in the dining room, and down here, someone's getting coffee.
A lot of short clips for a little bit. I'll be on
New
again at
Year's
5.
Day, 1818. The first
Tomorrow,
real
I'll be able to get
driveway for the
one, so I'll have
president.
to go somewhere.
The house finally has an entrance that matches its status. The exterior isn't finished yet, the columns are finally coming. They are literally carving the earth to fit the house. It's a massive effort to shape what we now call the President's Park.
This is
1824. It's a box. Let's give it the iconic curve.
These aren't just for looks. They support the grand balcony, 30 feet high. One slip, and the stone shatters. The most famous porch in the world. This is where history waves from.
Finally, the house gets its front porch.
Dry entry. No more getting wet while entering the house, lighting the darkness. But the floor is starting to creak. Gaslight. No more candles. but the air is getting heavy with fumes.
Running water. No more buckets from the lawn.
Modern cooking. The kitchen is finally evolving. Natural light for the dark hallways. The first West Wing was actually a garden for flowers. Coal-fired heat is now everywhere. The fireplaces are just for show.
The first instant message. The White House is connected.
The wood structure is already 30 years old. It's struggling. Solving the smell problem. A fence for a president. The first official White House library. Replacing wood with stone. Fire safety and style. Sealing the iconic entrance. They didn't just want to win. They wanted to...
Okay, part 3.
It's the icon we know. But it's getting crowded inside. It's 1902. This house is meant to be a home, but it's being swallowed by the job. It's a mess.
The flowers are gone. We need offices. Digging the foundation for the temporary executive office building.
The first bridge between home and work.
It was supposed to be temporary. It's still here today. The president finally has a real office.
1891. Electricity.
Yep. Everything's
President
good,
Harrison was
Bill.
too scared to touch the switches.
Retrofitting a 100-year-old stone house for the electric age. No more stairs. The president is going up. Where the biggest decisions in history are made.
Taft wants an office that history of the house.
It's hard to build a room with no corners. The resolute desk. A gift from the Queen, carved from a ghost ship.
Security is getting serious.
Another fire. The West Wing is gutted, but they rebuild it instantly.
Hey, Carol, thanks. There's 4
lied.
parts.
One building, one look. A protected walk for the president. The White House is finally ringing. The sounds of the new executive branch. Logistics for the president. Keeping the main house as a museum.
A peaceful escape, just steps from the Oval Office.
Fighting the DC humidity. A warning. The house is getting too heavy for its old bones. A band-aid for a dying structure. More weight on the roof.
The power has moved. But the house is about to snap. The roof is literally rotting away. It's 1927, and it's a death trap.
Tearing off the original 1817 roof. Modernity arrives. The WH gets its first real steel skeleton. The sound of progress. Steel trusses replacing timber. Increasing the living space by 50% without changing the silhouette. Fireproof and solid for the first time.
The president's private sunroom. The world is at war. The White House has to become a fortress.
The public thinks it is for offices. It's actually a cover for something else. A secret project. Digging through the DC clay. At night.
The Presidential Emergency Operations Center. The White House now has a basement that can survive a bomb.
A 760-foot tunnel connecting the East Wing to the Treasury Building.
FDR's war room, where the world was won.
Moving the office to where it is today. Better light, more privacy. The first bulletproof windows. 1942.
Hiding the house from enemy bombers.
the nerve center of the war. The house is carrying too much weight. It's groaning. The stone walls are spreading. The house is giving up.
The signal that the president.
Okay, last part, you guys.
It's sinking into the swamp. It can't wait anymore. One more year, and this house is going to fall.
The limit has been reached. A piano almost fell through the floor.
The White House is officially condemned. It's unsafe for the president to live here. They wanted to destroy it. But the stone shell was too iconic to lose. The great gutting begins. We're going inside the skeleton. Everything 150 years old is coming out.
This is my favorite part. A bulldozer where the Red Room used to be.
Anchoring the house to the bedrock. No more sinking into the swamp. It's a building within a building. Arslan Sofring are the Tartberspring. The White House is now a reinforced concrete bunker. Building the floors back, level by level, stronger than ever. Adding more escape routes. Modern plumbing for every room. The digital age starts here.
Finally, no more sweating in the DC heat.
The walls are white and clean again. The iconic white returns. Truman's controversial porch. People hated it. Now we love it. A puzzle. Putting the old face on a new body. Brighter than it's ever been. Ready to feed the world's leaders.
It took 4 years and $6 million. The house is immortal.
Every house has secrets. This one has dozens. It's solid now. No more swaying. The modern executive branch.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
It looks like 1800. It feels like 1950. But it's built for 2030. This house is about to get its soul back. It's becoming a museum, not just an office.
Recovering the history that was buried. Making the White House a museum.
Even the most powerful person in the world needs a way to blow off steam.
Real-time intel becomes the priority. The sit room is born.
The first energy-efficient White House, ahead of its time.
The pool is still there, right under the reporter's feet. The digital revolution enters the West Wing. Total global connectivity. No more secrets. Protection against modern threats. Keeping the president cool under pressure. The wall is getting higher. Protecting the data from any attack. Feeding state dinners for 200 people.
It's not just a house, it's an iceberg. 90% is below the ground. It's a city under one roof, and it's ready for 2026.
233 years of grit, fire, and steel.
This house has died and been reborn 5 times, and it's still the center of the world. If you want to see how the world's most complex structures are built, subscribe to Next Gen Manufacturing.
Okay. I'm glad I found that. I had it yesterday, but we couldn't play it because we had a long show. The next 3 are going to be short. We do a lot of short ones for a bit. Tomorrow, I got to go to the doctor's.
What she did next left everyone speechless. You see, back in 2005, on the first day of school, students at Joe T. Robinson High walked into something they had never seen before. A classroom with an empty floor where history teacher Martha Cothran was standing there quietly, waiting for them to react. Confused, the kids looked around and asked, "Miss Cothran, where are our desks?" But she didn't answer their question. Instead, she gave them a challenge. "You can't have a desk until you tell me how you earn the right to sit at one." Naturally, the answers came fast. Grades, behavior, community service, but every answer was still wrong. By second period, the confusion had turned into whispers. By third, parents were calling the office. And by lunchtime, the story had spread so far that local news crews were gathering outside her classroom to find out why she had done all this. Still, every period, no one could answer correctly, and the students ended up lining the walls, some even so tired that they began sitting on the floor, waiting for someone, anyone, to solve the mystery. Finally, during the last class of the day, Martha told them they were going to learn the truth at last. She walked to the door, opened it, and the entire class froze, hit hard by what they saw. 27 U.S. military veterans, some older, some younger, some in uniform, slowly filed in, each one carrying a school desk. One by one, they placed the desks in perfect rows. Then they stepped back and stood silently along the walls beside the students. After that, Martha turned to her class and said softly, "You didn't earn the right to sit at these desks. These heroes did it for you. They paid the price through sacrifice, through service, through time away from their own families, so you could enjoy something as simple and as precious as sitting in this classroom, learning in freedom. Now it's your responsibility to honor it. Don't ever forget that." Later, she was awarded Arkansas's VFW Teacher of the Year, and her powerful lesson spread nationwide, a story still shared today. And for her students that day, it became the most unforgettable history lesson they would ever experience. So this teacher made parents furious and was
So what do you guys think of that one? Part two, or two parts.
Oil. Okay, so let's talk about that. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves on Earth.
5
Its
minutes.
reserves are 13% bigger than Saudi Arabia's. But not all oil is the same. Saudi oil is light and easy to refine. Venezuelan oil is extremely heavy, thick, difficult to process, and only certain refineries in the world can handle it. Oil was
Thank you,
discovered in
guys.
Venezuela in the 1920s, and the US was immediately involved. American oil companies literally built Venezuela's oil industry because the country didn't have the infrastructure or the technology to do so. At the time, Venezuela was a poor country with an agrarian economy. It was mostly coffee and cacao plantations. There were no petroleum engineers, no heavy machinery, zero knowledge on how to run a global oil industry. But by 1928, with lots of help from US oil companies, Venezuela was one of the world's top exporters. Overnight, Venezuela became one of the richest countries in the world. During the 1970s, Arab states imposed an oil embargo on the United States because of its support of Israel. This led global oil prices to explode, soaring from $1.80 a barrel to over $11 a barrel, a 500% increase. That crisis shook the entire world economy. That is, except for Venezuela, which suddenly saw billions of dollars worth of oil revenue entering its state coffers. And right after that, in 1975, Venezuela nationalized its oil industry and created PDVSA, Petróleos de Venezuela, or Venezuelan Petroleum, the state-owned company that still exists today. But even after the nationalization of its oil industry, Venezuela still needed the US. Why? Because the US Gulf Coast has huge refineries built specifically for heavy crude, the type of oil that sits under Venezuela. And this arrangement benefited both sides. Venezuela, a country roughly the size of Texas, doesn't have anywhere near the refining infrastructure needed to process hundreds of thousands of barrels of heavy crude oil per day. Venezuela's own refineries can only handle a fraction of what the country extracts, so US refineries processed it. Venezuela got billions in revenue, and American companies profited from the refining operations. Everyone had a reason to keep the partnership going. But without heavy crude, those US refineries struggle. They literally hunger for Venezuelan oil. Now, there's this big misconception that Hugo Chavez, the populist and self-proclaimed socialist president of Venezuela, who died in 2013, took back the industry from the US private interests that controlled it. But that's simply not true. Chavez became hostile to the US politically, yes, but he still depended on the US market. Venezuelan oil continued flowing to American refineries, and Chavez took advantage of the largest oil boom in history, gaining access to billions of dollars in oil revenue. What Chavez did do was purge PDVSA, the state oil company. He fired thousands of expert workers and replaced them with loyalists. Corruption exploded, production collapsed, and the economy imploded. When Chavez died in 2013, he handpicked this man, Nicolás Maduro, as his successor. Maduro inherited a country that was collapsing economically and made it worse, much worse. By 2017, 76 out of 84 PDVSA plants were paralyzed. Venezuela's oil production fell to 20% of its total capacity. Now, I can already hear you in the comments saying, that's because of sanctions. But no, not yet at least. Before 2019, US sanctions only targeted individual Venezuelan officials, human rights abusers, narco traffickers, and corrupt elites. Venezuela was still completely free to sell its oil to the United States. And it did. The first oil sanctions only came in 2019, under Trump's first presidency. He basically imposed an embargo on PDVSA.
What happened? What happened here? Stopped.
Venezuela's oil production fell to 20% of its total capacity. Now, I can already hear you in the comments saying, that's because of sanctions. But no, not yet at least. Before 2019, US sanctions only targeted individual Venezuelan officials, human rights abusers, narco traffickers, and corrupt elites. Venezuela was still completely free to sell its oil to the United States. And it did. The first oil sanctions only came in 2019, under Trump's first presidency. He basically imposed an embargo on PDVSA, the Venezuelan state oil company. Ironically, this hurt US companies too, because they lost access to the heavy crude their refineries are specifically built for. So why sanction PDVSA if American companies hated it? Well, because Maduro suspended elections and was consolidating a dictatorship in Venezuela. The sanctions weren't about oil, they were about politics. It was a move to support the political opposition in Venezuela, which had won an election that Nicolás Maduro refused to accept. So where does that leave us right now? 6 years later, Maduro is completely broke and running out of options. They rely on drug trafficking and illicit activities to survive. Maduro, more than Trump, funnily enough, desperately wants the US companies to reestablish their operations in Venezuela. 2 weeks ago, Maduro even offered Trump all of Venezuela's resources, including all the oil, and also to reduce economic ties with China and Russia if Trump would just leave him alone. So if it was just about oil, Trump could have just accepted Maduro's offer, but he didn't. So no, it's not just about oil. Oil is just a piece of the story, but it's not the whole story. And you might be thinking, okay, Alex, but if it's not about oil, what is it about? Why is the US about to attack Venezuela? And if you did think that, thank you for asking, because
Okay, that was part one. Yeah.
confirmed to reporters that he spoke on the phone with the Venezuelan
This one
dictator
is
Nicolás Maduro last week.
8
It's
minutes.
also reported that he told Maduro to flee if he wanted to save himself and his family. And later today at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Trump will be holding a high-level meeting to define his next steps against Venezuela. For months now, the Trump administration has justified military operations in the Caribbean as a, quote, war on drugs, blowing up dozens of boats it claims are trafficking narcotics. But a lot of people think these strikes have less to do with cocaine and everything to do with regime change in Venezuela. Trump and his Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, have proudly posted videos of US forces blowing up these alleged drug boats. In total, more than 80 people have been killed in these dramatic strikes. Trump says that drug cartels are sending narcotics into the US to kill Americans, and that destroying these small boats is an act of self-defense that is legal under US and international law. But almost all of these attacks are happening off the coast of Venezuela, and most Americans who die from drug overdoses die from fentanyl, not cocaine. Meanwhile, the main drug flowing through Venezuela is cocaine, not fentanyl. About 20% of the world's cocaine passes through the country. So, what's really going on here? There's a whole legal debate behind all of this. Are the strikes legal? Do they violate international law? That's something we can get into later in another video. But today, I want to start chipping away at a much bigger question. Is Nicolás Maduro actually running a narco dictatorship? To make things even more interesting, the US has offered a $50 million bounty on Maduro's head, as well as other high-ranking members of his regime, who in 2020 were indicted by a federal grand jury on drug trafficking charges. So let's start with the Cartel of the Suns, or El Cartel de los Soles in Spanish. If you follow US news, you've probably seen this name everywhere. First, where does the name actually come from? The Cartel of the Suns refers to the sun-shaped insignias that Venezuelan generals wear on their uniforms. The term first appeared in the early 1990s, before Hugo Chavez came to power, though in the last decade, the term has been used to refer to the network of Venezuelan officials tied to drug trafficking.
Were you listening at the beginning?
When you think of the Cartel of the Suns, don't picture a classic drug cartel. It's nothing like the Sinaloa cartel or Jalisco Nueva Generación or any other well-known cartels. Think of it instead as like a massive drug trafficking network that's integrated into the Venezuelan armed forces and the Maduro regime itself. So when did Venezuela's ties to drug trafficking actually begin? It dates back to the late 80s and early 90s, right when Colombia, with US support, was dismantling Pablo Escobar's famous Medellin cartel. As Colombian drug trafficking routes came under pressure, the Venezuelan military officers began offering alternative corridors to the Caribbean and towards the United States. Then Chavez came to power in 1999, and everything accelerated drastically. In 2005, Chavez cut all cooperation with the US Drug Enforcement Agency, the DEA. Suddenly, Venezuelan government and military officials felt free to do business with traffickers. Meanwhile, the FARC, the Colombian guerrilla group funded by cocaine, moved part of its operations into Venezuela, protected by a government that no longer worked with US anti-drug forces. According to former DEA agents, the Chavez government played a massive role. Venezuelan officials, local police, the army, even military aviation began partnering with Colombian armed groups and, in their words, flooded the US with hundreds of tons of cocaine. And this was already happening years ago, in the mid-2000s. Under Chavez, Venezuela became one of the primary transit hubs for cocaine headed to Europe and the United States. Corruption and official protection made Venezuela the perfect territory for drug traffickers. Much of the operation is centered in the western states of Venezuela called Apure and Táchira, right on the Colombian border. And here's how it works in very general terms. The cocoa leaves grown by the FARC and other groups in Colombia are moved into Venezuela, processed into cocaine in facilities protected by Venezuelan officials, and then flown to Central America, destined for US markets. In 2010, the UN found that over 50% of the maritime cocaine shipments to Europe detected between 2006 and 2008 came from Venezuela. In 2015, the US General John Kelly, the four-star general and head of US Southern Command at the time, said that almost all drug trafficking flights to Central America and the Caribbean originated in Venezuela. Now, there's tons of evidence on this, but we'll use the example of Garcia, the Venezuelan businessman and billionaire drug kingpin who was arrested in 2010. Macled claimed that he built his empire with the help of at least 40 Venezuelan generals and a Supreme Court justice and countless other officials. When he was arrested in Colombia in 2010, both the US and Venezuela requested his extradition. Chavez fought aggressively to get him back, possibly about what Macled might reveal to US authorities. But Macled was just a small part of the drug trafficking machine rooted in the Chavez government. In 2008, the US sanctioned 3 senior Chavez officials for FARC-related trafficking. These were the first sanctions the US ever imposed on Venezuela. They were Hugo Carvajal, Chavez's head of military intelligence, Henry Rangel Silva, his head of civilian intelligence, and Ramon Rodriguez Chacín, his interior minister. Of course, dismissed the accusations as Yankee imperialism. That's a direct quote. But it's clear that drug networks penetrate the highest levels of the Venezuelan state. Since US oil sanctions hit Venezuela in 2019, the Maduro regime has relied even more to maintain the corruption networks that keep him in power. But scaling a drug trafficking empire isn't small aircraft from Venezuela to Central America, but Chavez's former intelligence chief who just pleaded guilty in a U.S. court. During his time in the Venezuelan government, Venezuela exported 100 tons of cocaine over 8 years. That's a massive 10 and 20 estimate is that an increase. So what changed? Well, for starters, small planes aren't enough anymore. Cocaine is heavy. Because of the increase in production, traffickers started to ship cocaine out by boat, which can carry more weight. And if I had to guess, that's why the Trump administration began this whole thing by deploying so many U.S. naval assets near Venezuela. That the boats being blown up belong to cartel bosses, although it's very likely that they are carrying drugs. The men on these boats definitely are not drug kingpins. Most of the people on those boats are most certainly poor fishermen forced to do these trips by traffickers who run the operations in Venezuela. I know, that was a lot. But if there's one thing that you remember in this video, let it be this. In other places, cartels infiltrate the state. In Venezuela, the state is the cartel. The Cartel de los Soles isn't an outside criminal group or government institutions. It is the government itself. Airport commanders, National Guard units, generals, political elites. And it's clear that the leaders of the Venezuelan regime, including Maduro himself, are involved in leading the drug operations within Venezuela. And this leads us to a very interesting question. What happens when a criminal organization has taken over a country? Some, including Trump probably, would argue that such a regime poses a national security threat to the other countries surrounding it. Just last week, the US officially labeled the cartel a foreign terrorist organization, giving the US new legal authority to take more drastic measures against Venezuela. And it's not just the US that's on board with this. Argentina, Paraguay, Ecuador, and the Dominican Republic, as well as Peru, have also designated the Cartel de los Soles as a terrorist organization, with Nicolás Maduro, the president of Venezuela, as its leader. All right, so what does this all mean? If you ask me, it means that the US is prepared to take direct action against Venezuela very, very soon. More importantly, though, what do you think? Do you really think this is about drugs?
Okay, that guy must be from Venezuela reporting. Thought those were two good clips. We'll get going on the X2 report. I believe this one was yesterday. Hey, how's it going? I'll be doing two shows today. How you feeling, Karen? Hey, Karen. How about those Bears?
Hi, and welcome. You're listening to
That's
the
good. I'll
X1
call you after
Report.
the
My name is
show.
David. This episode 3811 a.m. Today's date is January 5th, 2026. The title of the episode is You're Witnessing the Dismantling of the Central Bank. The debt is in violation of the Constitution. Hey, listen, if you're over 40 and planning to retire someday, the window to protect what you've built may be smaller than you realize. Here's a question most people never ask. Is your portfolio built for what's coming next? Many investors in their 40s and 50s discover they have little to no exposure to precious metals. That means their savings are largely tied to markets, policies, and paper assets, with very little protection if conditions change. As retirement moves from someday to on the horizon, protecting what you have already built becomes just as important as growing it. That's where Noble Gold Investments come in, helping helping investors reduce risk by adding physical gold to their portfolios. Right now may be a smart time to talk with Noble Gold Investments. No pressure, no sales gimmick, just clear answers and strategy built around our gold.
John,
Visit
Happy New Year.
x22gold.com
Everything
and
good?
build your portfolio for the long term.
A lot of
That's
intel I'm getting out. Yesterday we had a
x22gold.com, or
long
just click the
show.
link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk.
I'll be
Consult your
back on
financial
at
advisor
5.
before making investment decisions. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, the private West Central Bank, the World Economic Forum, you can see slowly but surely what is Trump doing. He's basically dismantling the central bank system slowly but surely. And in the end, once Trump has all the leverage and he has the tariff system working against the central bank system, he has the control of oil where he can bring the oil prices way, way down. You're going to see that Trump now is going to be weaning us off the central bank system. The central bank system is going to lose all their power. And we could see that, yes, he has now freed Venezuela. Yes, there's still individuals inside Venezuela, but eventually what's going to happen is Venezuela is going to be working with the United States, and we're going to see many, many changes. Think about why the deep state players, the central bankers, have created these countries where
Appreciate
the
it,
United
John.
States
Yep,
placed
thanks.
sanctions on these countries, but kept these people in position, but actually didn't use the oil from these countries and allow the oil prices to continually rise over time and have one central location like OPEC control the price of oil. This way they can control the petrodollar system. Now Trump is reversing all of this and actually taking control and actually getting more and more leverage as time goes on, so we can basically compete and then beat the central bank system and then dismantle the central bank system. And that's what we're witnessing right now. And as this happens, what happens? The alternative currency, which is gold, silver, Bitcoin, that's going to continually move up and up and up to compete against the fiat currency. Basically, when the central bank came into existence, Trump now is doing everything that they did when they came into existence, and he's just reversing it step by step. Just like when they came into power, they went ahead and they removed the tariff system. Then all of a sudden they placed taxes on the wealthy, and then it was the upper middle class, then the middle class, lower middle class. Trump is just doing everything in reverse right now at a very, very accelerated rate. And soon we're going to see everything start to change. And think about it, when the central bank system went full fiat in the 70s, they had to remove the manufacturing in this country. All the oil was out in the Middle East and Venezuela and many other Iran, many other places. And they had to control the price of oil. They had to keep it up. They couldn't allow it to be 20 cents a gallon. Because again, they knew their system over time, what would happen? There'd be inflation, and they would have to raise the oil prices. They couldn't allow the oil prices to stay low. Because again, they had to prop up their petrodollar system. Now Trump is reversing all of this, and he's taking control over the oil market. Actually, when he tells OPEC, hey, listen, increase production, you know what they do? They increase production, which is very, very interesting, which actually lowers the price. He's doing this right now because he's preparing the United States to drill. Why do you think they never wanted to drill for oil in the United States? It's not like we don't have oil. We have tons of oil. But why didn't they want to do that? Because that would add more capacity, which means the prices would go way, way down. Now Trump is basically setting the stage, setting everything up to bring down the private West Central Bank system. And when you look at Venezuela, they hold about 303 billion barrels of oil reserves. Much of this is heavy crude oil. Cobisi Letter and X put this out and said, Texas and Louisiana also happen to have 6 of the largest heavy crude oil refineries in the world. What does this mean? In the early 2000s, Venezuela was much larger oil producer than the U.S. In fact, Venezuela produced 3 times as much oil at nearly 3.3 million barrels per day. By 2020, Venezuela's production had declined to just 900,000 a day, while the U.S. hit 5 million a day. This is key. Venezuela has been heavily sanctioned by the U.S. for years. This resulted in old infrastructure hindering the ability to extract heavy crude oil. Heavy oil is far more expensive to extract than light crude. This requires advanced techniques like steam injection. The image below helps to better understand. Shows vials of very thick oil and very light colored oil. And basically, it shows you the difference between the two. The U.S. has become incredibly dependent on heavy crude oil. In 1980, just 10 to 20% of U.S. crude oil imports were heavy crude oil. Today, the majority of U.S. crude oil imports are heavy crude oil at approximately 70%. The U.S. wants more heavy crude, and Venezuela has billions of barrels of it. Now, take a look at crude oil imports to the U.S. Canada's share of imports has surged from 15 to 60% of U.S. imports. Meanwhile, Venezuela's imports to the U.S. have effectively stalled. If the U.S. can restore these imports, it would be highly profitable for the U.S. government. Currently, Venezuela holds more oil reserves than any other country in the world. They even hold 20% more oil reserves than Saudi Arabia. What's the best way to restore these massive heavy crude oil imports to the U.S.? Take control of the country's oil reserve. And that's exactly what Trump has done right now. And it becomes even more strategic for the U.S. Aside from Venezuela, Russia has some of the largest heavy crude oil reserves in the world. Tapping into Venezuela's heavy crude oil reserves effectively further weakens Russia's influence. This is also a geopolitical move. To top it all off, China is the largest buyer of Venezuelan oil. This accounts for approximately 5% of China's total annual oil imports. As the U.S. gains control of Venezuela, this gives President Trump even more control over China. Trump said he would sell some of this oil to China. So you could see right now, Trump now is battling the deep state players. He is now removing everything the central bankers, the deep state players have put into place. And now you could see that everything is about to change. And again, it gives him leverage over Canada, gives him leverage over Russia, gives him leverage over China. And we're able to produce a lot of oil, which is actually going to bring down the prices. That is what we're going to experience, which is going to be absolutely amazing. Now, the other thing that's absolutely amazing is that the U.S. has secured silver smelter deal to process latent metals. So this is very, very interesting. The U.S. Department of War announced investment of over $2 billion for a U.S. smelter to process critical minerals such as silver and more. What will be a $7 billion plus total build. This is the first such facility since the 70s to be built to process concentrates. Echo put this out and said, less than 24 hours after U.S. military pressure escalated in Venezuela, something far more.
If you're rubbing expensive creams on your face, you're aging it faster. This is the ginger trick that made me look
telling happened. The infrastructure was already in place. The United States quietly locked in a strategic silver smelter deal designed to process up to $1 trillion in Latin American precious metals, including Venezuela's supply. Let that sink in. An $8 billion state-of-the-art facility, jointly backed by the Wall Street Capital and the U.S. Department of Defense, or U.S. Department of War, now sits at the center of the supply chain. This isn't about an invasion. This is about control, security, price discovery, physical metals moving out of unstable regions, refining brought back under U.S. oversight, paper markets losing influence, strategic metals secured for energy defense, and AI when governments build first and explain later. It's not speculation, it's preparation. Silver isn't being hyped, it's being positioned. And that's absolutely true. Gold is being positioned. Silver is being positioned. Oil is being positioned to work against the central bank system. Remember, the central bank put everything into place so they can control the world's economy. They can control the creation of currency. And they needed to prop up their currency by controlling everything that you see. They had to control gold with the paper markets. They had to control silver with the silver paper markets. They had to try to control Bitcoin. Hey, listen, if you're over 40 and planning to retire someday, the window to protect what you've built may be smaller than you realize. Here's a question most people never ask. Is your portfolio built for what's coming next? Many investors in their 40s and 50s discover they have little to no exposure to precious metals. That means their savings are largely tied to markets, policies, and paper assets, with very little protection if conditions change. As retirement moves from someday to on the horizon, protecting what you have already built becomes just as important as growing it. That's where Noble Gold Investments come in, helping investors reduce risk by adding physical gold to their portfolios. Right now may be a smart time to talk with Noble Gold Investments. No pressure, no sales gimmick, just clear answers and strategy built around our goals. Visit x22gold.com and build your portfolio for the long term. That's x22gold.com, or just click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. by having ETFs and throwing, dumping ETFs to try to bring the price down, telling people that criminals use cryptocurrency. They tried to do all of these things to control it. They centralized oil in the Middle East. They created OPEC to centralize the control of all of this. And now it's all completely and utterly falling apart. Think about what Trump is doing right now. He's basically, instead of centralization, he's decentralizing everything. Now there's gold. Now there's silver. Now there's Bitcoin, which is now going to be decentralized, and the central bankers are going to be losing control over this. Oil is going to be decentralized. The central banks will be losing control over this. And as we move forward, the tariff system is going to get stronger and stronger and stronger as the central bank gets weaker and weaker and weaker. And like we said from the very, very beginning, all this debt that we've been accumulating, well, it looks like it's in violation of the Constitution. I wouldn't be surprised in the end if Trump starts to look into the Fed and look at what has been going on. And I do believe this is why the fraud has been brought out to the public, to show people, look, all of this was done against the Constitution. And if it was done against the Constitution, do we truly owe all of this debt back to the central bank system? Or do we owe a small portion of the debt that actually goes along with the Constitution? Because the Constitution is the rule, the law of the land. We'll be talking about that in just a sec. But Trump, he put this out on Truth. He said, we've taken in and will soon be receiving more than $600 billion in tariffs. But the fake news media refuse to talk about it because they hate and disrespect our country and want to interfere with the upcoming tariff decision, one of the most important ever of the United States Supreme Court. Because of tariffs, our country is financially and from a national security standpoint far stronger and more respected than ever before. God bless America, President Donald J. Trump. And yes, the tariff system is going to continually grow. And yes, there's a very, very important decision that the Supreme Court's going to have to make. But I do believe when they look back in time, they're going to see that, yes, there were precedents that were set in the past. We had certain presidents, which Trump calls them the tariff men. They used tariffs to enrich this country. So it's not like Trump just came up with it. This has been used going back in time. So once again, we can see that this is very, very different right now. And I do believe the Supreme Court is going to rule in Trump's favor. Now, like we said before, it looks like the debt that we've been taking on, it might be, and I do believe it is, in violation of our Constitution. Peter Sang-Long explains, the 10th Amendment says the federal government can only do things expressly listed in the Constitution. Every other federal activity is illegal. And here's the list in its entirety. Number 1, mint gold and silver, not paper money. Establish citizenship rules. Number 3, post offices and post roads. Number 4, bankruptcy, counterfeiting, piracy laws. Number 5, patent and copyrights. Number 6, regulate commerce with foreign nations, between states and with native tribes. 7, declare war, maintain army, navy, and militia. 8, establish lower federal courts. 9, exercise authority over Washington, D.C. That means roughly 80% of federal spending is, in fact, illegal. So all these programs, everything that they put into place is completely and utterly illegal. And on top of that, since that all violates the Constitution, we also need to look into basically what the Federal Reserve has been doing and what criminal activity they've been involved with. Which means I do believe in the end that we're going to see that all this debt that they say we owe, we really don't owe. And I do believe Trump is going to end up paying off the debt that we do owe, and the central bank system will cease to exist the way we know it today, and it'll be restructured into the Treasury. And you have to remember, he needs to put all these things in place first, because again, just like when the central bank came into existence, they had to put all of their things into place to take over from the tariff system, because before the central bank system, what were we using? We were using a tariff system to fund the government. People weren't paying income tax. All the money was coming in externally. So what did the central bank have to do? Well, first, they came into existence. Woodrow Wilson signed them into law in the middle of, the evening during the holiday season of Christmas, around that time period. And all of a sudden, the central bank was born. And then slowly but surely, what did they do? they started to implement everything. They started to change the Constitution. They
No, I
implemented
didn't.
the Federal
What's
Reserve
about?
Act
What
to
happened?
establish the Federal Reserve, which is actually a private corporation outside of the U.S. government. They implemented the IRS. Why? They needed that to collect taxes. They started the narrative, letting everyone know that we're only going to tax the rich. And everyone said, this is incredible. Let's just tax the rich. Let the rich people pay for it. But it was a gigantic trick. And over time, what happened? Everyone had to pay taxes. As they were doing this, they were slowly weaning us off the tariff system. They were removing the tariffs. And eventually, once we had no tariffs, the central bank system came into power. People were paying taxes.
Yeah, I think
People were now enslaved
I'll
to the
wait
central
till it's
bank
over.
system. Then in the 40s, after World War II, we became the reserve currency because, again,
4
it
minutes.
was the UK as the reserve currency. Their system was crashing. They couldn't take it any further, so they had a reset. That's why they had a war. And now we are the reserve currency. As time went on, what happened? Their plan was to remove us from the gold standard. That happened in the 70s. We were removed from the gold standard. We went full fiat. The central bank took full control. 2008, the central bank took complete and utter control of the entire system. Interest rates, stock market, you name it. They control it all. And they were planning to bring us into the Great Reset, the Green New Scam. That was their plan. Remember, they're very patient. They knew it would take a long time because it's very hard to convince people, hey, listen, let's go off the gold standard. Let's go full fiat. The people wouldn't accept that. Hey, how about everyone pay taxes? No one would accept that either. So they had to do it very, very slowly. So if you look at this, Trump is just reversing everything that they have done.
Try this strange 10-second sugar hack to reverse high blood sugar practically overnight. It works so well that thousands of men and women are already using it from the comfort of their own homes. But did you know type 2 diabetes?
And he's doing exactly what the central bank did when they came into existence, but he's just doing it in reverse. And I do believe in the end, as he takes control over the oil, takes control of the money coming into this country, takes control of the crypto market, and I don't mean he's going to be controlling, it's going to make it so the deep state players can't manipulate anything. As gold and silver moves up and up and up, it's going to reflect on what the fiat currency actually is. It's a worthless paper. And I do believe in the end, what Trump is going to do is he's waiting for the right moment, the right time. You don't want to mention gold too soon. You don't want to mention the Constitution too soon. And once gold hits a certain price, I do believe all of a sudden we're going to have audits of Fort Knox and many other areas to see how much we have. And I wouldn't be surprised if we have a lot more gold than people could ever imagine. And with the new value of gold, because right now it's valued at what, $42 an ounce. Once we show that it's 8,000, 9,000, 10,000, 12,000, well, that gives him a lot of leverage. Take cryptocurrency, take silver, take gold, put that all together and think about it. We just mentioned that a new smelter plant is coming online. You could see that everything is going to be changing. And basically, this will all be used, put it all together, gold, silver, cryptocurrency, oil, the tariff system, the gold card, technology sales, the sale of energy. This will be a powerhouse system, and the central bank system will look like a very weak little system that nobody wants, because you have to remember, the tariff system is an income system. The central bank is a borrowing debt system. Trump is going to be bringing in currency externally. The central bank basically takes and robs the people of their hard-earned labor. So you're going to see a very, very, and Trump is positioning all of this. And as you watch this happen, the central bank is being dismantled right in front of your eyes. Listen, everyone. Thanks a lot for listening.
Okay, that was yesterday's X2 report. Moving on.
At large. The real reason the U.S. is invading Venezuela goes back to a deal Henry Kissinger made with Saudi Arabia in 1974. And I'm going to explain why this is actually about the survival of the U.S. dollar itself. not drugs, not terrorism, not democracy. This is about the petrodollar system that has kept America the dominant economic power for over 50 years. And Venezuela just threatened to end it. Here's what really happened. Venezuela has 303 billion barrels of proven oil reserves, the largest on earth, more than Saudi Arabia, 20% of the entire world's oil. But here's the part that matters. Venezuela was actively selling that oil in Chinese yuan, not dollars. In 2018, Venezuela announced it would free itself from the dollar. They started accepting yuan, euros, rubles, anything but dollars for oil. They were also petitioning to join BRICS. They were building direct payment channels with China that bypassed SWIFT entirely. SWIFT being the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication that ensures the whole world is reliant on the US dollar and banking system. And Venezuela was sitting on enough oil to fund de-dollarization for decades. Why does this matter? Because the entire American financial system is built on one thing, the petrodollar, which is US dollars earned by oil exporting countries from selling oil, creating a system where oil is priced and traded globally in US dollars. In 1974, Henry Kissinger made a deal with Saudi Arabia. All oil sold globally must be priced in US dollars. In exchange, America provides military protection. This single agreement created artificial demand for dollars worldwide. Every country on earth needs dollars to buy oil. This lets America print unlimited money while other countries have to work for it. It funds the military, the welfare state, the deficit spending. The petrodollar is more important to U.S. hegemony than aircraft carriers. And there's a pattern of what happens to leaders who challenge it. In 2000, Saddam Hussein announces Iraq will sell oil in euros instead of dollars. In 2003, Iraq was invaded. Regime was changed. Iraq's oil immediately switched back to dollars, and Saddam was lynched. The WMDs were never found because they never existed. Thus, the U.S. killing over 1 million Iraqis just for shits and giggles. In 2009, Gaddafi proposes a gold-backed African currency called the gold dinar for oil trade. Hillary Clinton's own leaked emails confirmed this was the primary reason for intervention. The email quote said, "This gold was intended to establish a pan-African currency based on the Libyan golden dinar." In 2011, NATO bombs Libya. Gaddafi was sodomized and murdered, and Libya now has open slave markets. We came, we saw, he died. Hillary Clinton laughed on camera. The gold dinar died with him. And now Maduro, with 5 times more oil than Saddam and Gaddafi combined, actively selling in the Chinese currency yuan, building payment systems outside dollar control, petitioning to join BRICS, partnered with China, Russia, and Iran, the 3 countries leading global de-dollarization. This isn't coincidence. The U.S. rule of challenge the petrodollar, get your regime changed. Every single time. Stephen Miller, U.S. Homeland Security Advisor, literally said it out loud 2 weeks ago. American sweat, ingenuity, and toil created the oil industry in Venezuela. Its tyrannical expropriation was the largest recorded theft of American wealth and property. He's not even hiding it. And Trump's address was a clear admission to it. They're claiming Venezuelan oil belongs to America because U.S. companies developed it 100 years ago. By this logic, every nationalized resource in history was theft. But here's the deeper problem. The petrodollar is already dying. Russia sells oil in rubles and yuan since Ukraine. Saudi Arabia is openly discussing yuan settlements. Iran has been trading in non-dollar currencies for years. China built CIPS, the cross-border interbank payment system, their own alternative to SWIFT, with 4,800 banks in 185 countries. BRICS is actively building payment systems that bypass the dollar entirely. The BRICS Bridge Project, mBridge, lets central banks settle trades instantly in local currencies. Venezuela joining BRICS with 303 billion barrels of oil would accelerate this exponentially. That's what this invasion is really about. This isn't about stopping drugs. Venezuela accounts for less than 1% of U.S. cocaine, and Trump just pardoned the president of Honduras, a man responsible for trafficking 400 tons of cocaine into America. This isn't about terrorism. There's literally zero evidence Maduro runs a terror organization. And we all know how the biggest terrorists of our planet, Benjamin Netanyahu and the terrorist ethno-state of Israel, have been pushing for this attack on Venezuela because the ethno-state of Israel would not exist without U.S.'s powerful money, a.k.a. the power of their petrodollar. This is not about democracy. The U.S. supports Saudi Arabia, which has 0 elections. This is about maintaining a 50-year-old agreement that lets America print money while the world works for it. And the consequences are terrifying. Russia, China, and Iran are already denouncing this as armed aggression. China is Venezuela's biggest oil customer. They're losing billions. BRICS nations are watching a country get invaded for trading outside the dollar. Every nation considering de-dollarization just got the message. Challenge the dollar, and we will bomb you. But here's the problem. That message might accelerate de-dollarization, but it will not stop it. Because now every country in the global south knows what happens if you threaten dollar hegemony. And they're realizing the only protection is to move faster. And the timing is insane. January 3rd, 2026, Venezuela invaded. Maduro captured. January 3rd, 1990, Panama invaded. Noriega captured. 36 years apart, almost to the day. Same playbook, same drug trafficking excuse. Same real reason, control of strategic resources and trade routes. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. What happens next? Trump's press conference at Mar-a-Lago set the narrative. U.S. oil companies are already lined up. Politico reported they've been approached about returning to Venezuela. The opposition will be installed. Oil will flow in dollars again. Venezuela becomes another Iraq, another Libya. And all you Venezuelans, celebrating specifically those of you living in your privilege of the Western world, are all cowards that have no idea what the fuck you're celebrating. Because you might as well be celebrating on your hands and knees, bowing to our pedophile in chief that is still actively deporting your people to a place that is about to go into all-out war with a puppet government installed that is a slave to Israel and the U.S. But here's what nobody's asking. What happens when you can no longer bomb your way to dollar dominance? When China has enough economic leverage and weaponry to retaliate? When BRICS controls 40% of global GDP and says no more dollars? When the world realizes the petrodollar is maintained by violence? America just showed its hand. The question is whether the rest of the world folds or calls their bluff. Because this invasion is an admission that the dollar can no longer compete on its own merits.
That's
when you have to bomb countries to keep them
Dave.
using your currency is already dying. Venezuela isn't the beginning. It's the desperate end to the U.S. empire. Have a good day.
Yep, I ended up being a newscaster. Wow, that was a wild one. Okay, I got 12-minute one. I'm going to do a few short ones after that. So far, we're doing good. Probably 1 o'clock, probably.
Carstens. Carstens was America's top hostage negotiator in the Trump and Biden administrations. He freed a total of 65 Americans unjustly held in countries including Russia, Iran, and Maduro's Venezuela. Yesterday, U.S. forces captured the Venezuelan dictator and his wife. Both are in jail in New York tonight, awaiting trial on drug trafficking charges. Over the years, Roger Carstens convinced Maduro to release 20 American hostages. And in that time, Carstens got to know the man who is at the center of U.S. foreign policy tonight.
The administration would paint Maduro as a bloodthirsty drug dealer.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the man you knew?
I don't think so. And yet, let me answer that by this way. On one way, I could say I'm not naive to the crimes that were committed by the regime writ large. And if you're the president of a country, you of course have responsibility for what's happening in your government. On the flip side, I would say that being the person in the room with President Maduro, my job was to get Americans back, and that's best done by building a very human relationship. And doing so, I didn't find him to be a bloodthirsty maniac. I found him to be a practical person, someone who wanted to find ways to solve the problems that were faced by his country.
When you first heard that Maduro had been captured, what did you think?
In a way, I wasn't shocked. I think probably as early as August or September, in watching the different military moves and the diplomatic moves take place, it seemed that unless he were willing to make some sort of deal or accommodation with the United States, I felt that the possibility of Delta Force showing up at 2 a.m. was very real.
Do you believe that the Maduro that you met was an international drug dealer?
From all the information that I've received, I would say no. I think the country clearly touched drugs. And there's information. I always have to be very clear that I might see certain amounts of information, and there's always a treasure trove of information that I've never seen or never will see due to classification or compartmentalization. But what I witnessed was not someone who is necessarily hardcore in the drug business, and I'll be interested to see in how the prosecution goes about proving their case.
63-year-old Nicolas Maduro was in power 12 years. In 2024, he lost his re-election bid, but remained in power and forced the winner into exile. Maduro ruled Venezuela's 28 million people as an autocrat, imprisoning his opposition and leaving the economy of an oil-rich nation in shambles. Yesterday, the U.S. Department of Justice revealed an indictment of Maduro, accusing him in a so-called narco-terrorism conspiracy.
These investigations aren't easy. They can be stressful and they can take up a lot of time. This one, 10 plus years. And you have
One of the investigators at the center of the case was Sandy Gonzalez. He served 25 years in the Drug Enforcement Administration, part of that in Venezuela and investigating Maduro.
Close to 20 years ago, DEA at the Special Operations Division started looking at high-level drug trafficking in Venezuela. And it eventually led to high-ranking military, police officials in Venezuela, and ultimately government officials.
And Maduro was among them.
Yes.
What was the most significant evidence against Maduro?
It's a state-sponsored drug trafficking organization, so it's a massive conspiracy. And what I mean by that is not everybody is going to be holding the kilos of cocaine, but in a conspiracy, you link everybody together. That's part of the chain. Maduro was part of that chain, first as a minister of foreign affairs and then later as a president. So when you're the president of a country and you are giving the green light to engage in this activity and you're putting people in critical positions in governors, ministers, heads of agencies, and allowing them to carry out these drug trafficking activities, you're just as guilty as the person making the drugs and transporting the drugs.
But is it a matter of Maduro simply looking the other way, or was he enriching himself from the drug trade?
I believe the evidence is going to show he was enriching himself. It was much more than just looking the other way. There was direct involvement.
With Maduro now gone, what in your view changes?
So it was a great step, but Maduro isn't the only person in that government that was involved in drug trafficking. There are still several DEA fugitives in Venezuela in positions in that government. The job's just started.
Maduro may be gone, but the drug conspiracy remains.
Yes.
Also remaining in Venezuela are a few Americans reportedly held in prisons who were not rescued Saturday morning. Former hostage negotiator Roger Carstens told us that Maduro held and tortured Americans who had been arrested for minor offenses.
You know, everyone had a different story, but the bottom line is that they were arrested for something in Venezuela, and within a few days, they were eventually sent to the intelligence or the military prisons in Caracas. Once in prison, then they were used as leverage by President Maduro in negotiations with the United States. But I can say, to my mind and my knowledge and having read all the intelligence, there did not seem to be a concerted program to go find Americans to use them as leverage. It's just that whenever an American was arrested, they would end up being used as leverage.
What did Maduro want in exchange?
You know, I think initially I wasn't sure that he knew what he wanted, but eventually meeting with President Maduro and discussing what it is that he might want, he settled on person-to-person swaps. There were a few people in U.S. prisons that he wanted to have returned, and that's what we ended up settling on over time.
How many Americans are still held there?
You know, I don't have the numbers exactly anymore because I'm no longer in the government, but as I understand it, 4 or 5.
In your view, should they have been rescued during this military operation?
I think I would have loved to have seen that. I imagine the challenges of conducting a military hostage raid are significant. The advantage of doing it the other night when we eventually went to get Maduro is that you've already eradicated the air defense capabilities of the Venezuelan military. You've challenged their command and control architecture. So adding on an additional mission of trying to get some hostages out, that might have been doable, but where are they? So since we may not know where all of them are, you could find yourself having to hit 2, 3, or 4 objectives. And now you're taking it to a level of complexity that might have been too much for that night. It might have been just enough to get President Maduro, and then after the fact, work on trying to get the release of these remaining Americans.
To release any remaining Americans and run Venezuela, the administration is speaking to Maduro's same government. now headed by Maduro's loyal vice president, Delcy Rodriguez. The U.S. did not leave troops on the ground, and Venezuela's repressive military, intelligence, and police units are still in place. Yesterday, the president said this about Venezuela's near future.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transitions.
Democrats, including Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, are asking, what's next? Yesterday, the president said, quote, "We're not afraid of boots on the ground."
I think right now we run the risk of Venezuela falling into some form of, chaos. I mean, who's going to run the country? Is it Delcy Rodriguez? Is it Maduro's handpicked person? Or is it a democratically elected leader? We should be on the side of democracy. I mean, we're the good guys here.
Kelly serves on the Senate Intelligence and Armed Services Committees. Isn't removing Maduro good for U.S. national security?
I think having Maduro out of the country, now in New York, being prosecuted for his crimes is a positive thing. The big question is just what comes next and who winds up in charge in Venezuela. They weren't thinking ahead here. Now they say they're going to run the country. What does that actually mean? I think this president needs to do a much better job articulating to the American people what is the plan going forward here. And then explain to the American people, what is this really about? Is it about law enforcement? Is it about drug smuggling into the United States? Is it about regime change? Or is it about what the president said 20 times yesterday? This is about extracting mineral rights, oil, from a foreign nation. He hasn't made that clear.
Yesterday, the president said it was about drugs.
The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. As alleged in the indictment, he personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel de las Solas, which flooded our nation with lethal poison, responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, the many, many Americans. Hundreds of thousands over the years of Americans died because of him.
In an interview today, President Trump threatened Venezuelan Vice President Rodriguez with what he called a fate worse than Maduro's if she didn't cooperate with the United States. Roger Carstens has negotiated extensively with the Venezuelan vice president. The Venezuelan vice president is now in charge.
Yeah.
Her brother is the head of the National Assembly. Are these people that the United States can work with?
When you take a look at Delcy Rodriguez, she's a lawyer, lots of international experience, hardcore technocrat. And I would say in my meetings with her, I found her to be pragmatic and rational and reasonable.
But the vice president has said that she wants Maduro back, wants to have nothing to do with the United States going forward.
I have to wonder, is she playing to a domestic audience? Is she playing to an audience made up of the military and the intelligence community of Venezuela? I'm not sure. But what I do know is everyone's essentially going to and eventually going to have to deal with the cards that have been laid on the table. And her cards are going to be pretty tough, and that the United States right now, to my mind, has the upper hand, and she'll have to have some sort of accommodation.
You've known the Venezuelan vice president for a long time. I wonder if you've sent her a message since all this happened.
I did pass a message off to her and her brother, and the message was simply like, look, if you can find a way, work towards cooperating with the United States. And I think my fear is that if the current people in charge really dig in hard, then the United States, having already eradicated Venezuela's air defense capability and shown an ability to degrade their communications modes and their command and control structures, that it'd probably be very easy for the United States to, rearm, re-up, and then go right back in to grab people. Probably be a harder legal case to make to do such a thing. But I think the right move for everyone is to just start to work together. And so the message I passed was one of simply saying, this is a time for trying to solve problems, and please be willing to and open to working with the U.S.
All right, a video from 60 Minutes. 5-minute one here.
All right, and wish me luck. That is straight up black ice. Hello, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
Good. Do you have any rooms for tonight?
You should, yeah.
Okay. Like how many? Can we get like 10?
10?
I mean, yeah, I know that might be.
Let's see. Did you already make reservations by any chance?
No.
No. What's
First.
the name?
It would be just Nick. I'll just put it under my personal. I don't know if you can use a government rate or not, but
Let's see. It depends because there's a lot of stuff going on right now. Is it what agency is it for? Using the government rate.
it'd be Department of Homeland Security.
So we're not accepting people from immigration, ICE agents, DHS into our property. It's just our management ownership.
Okay, I thought that changed today. Was that?
I just talked to my the owner of the building, and he didn't say there has been any changes. So
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just policy, you know.
Yeah, I mean
they
that's
said.
not your fault. Totally,
Yeah.
Totally get that. So they actually said that was like, I mean, honestly, this is the most convenient location. So it's
Right.
like, so they told you no, that there's no.
Yeah, no immigration.
Well, DHS isn't all.
Yeah.
Immigration. Okay. Okay. So even with the thing that they said earlier, where they mentioned that there was a statement that they put out, saying that they accept everybody and.
I haven't been informed. I can call my owner right now if you want.
Yeah.
And ask him what's.
That'd probably be good. Just trying to figure it out. So because it's somebody said, I didn't know it was this location, but Ever Peak Hospitality, right?
I'm new here,
Okay.
so I don't really know what's.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I'll just call him. Ask
Yeah,
him
that's
see what's.
been
been any.
just to be clear, like I'm
Right,
not
no,
trying
yeah,
to cause
I
any problems. It's just
Right,
like
no,
it's
yeah.
11 o'clock now.
Right.
So
Yeah. I get it. Yeah. I'll be right back.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Minute now.
Nobody's answering my calls right now.
Okay.
Because of the time. But.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is Ever Peak though, and they said Ever Peak Hospitality has moved swiftly to address this matter as it was inconsistent with our policy of being a welcoming place for all. We are in touch with the impacted guests to ensure they are accommodated without discriminating against any individuals or agencies and apologize to those impacted. Yeah, it's kind of long. I don't know. I was kind of surprised. I thought we were good to go. Like I said, not everybody with DHS is immigration. That's just
Right. Yeah, I get that, but it's
It's also a fraud investigation. I guess we'll just say as well. So.
Yeah, but.
Okay. No problem at all. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem. Not your fault.
Answer the phone.
All right. So they lied. Hilton and the Hampton Inn out here in Ever Peak Hospitality lied. Full of shit. And now they are going to, well, let's just say they effed around and it's find out time. They almost got a little bit of a pass the first time, right? You thought they may have learned their lesson. And this is why I said that their talk it means nothing. People were saying, oh, well, no, they said that they're going to change their policy. They lied. They didn't do it. So they're now going to get Bud Lighted. Congratulations, Hilton. You can take Hilton. You can take your name off that sign tomorrow. Today, you could do it. But we'll see if you will.
Okay, another update on Minnesota stuff. James Crockett knows You guys won't believe what she's going to say on this video. This will be a 5-minute one. It'll probably be the last one. And save the rest of the stuff for this evening.
From Venezuela without notifying Congress.
Oh,
President Trump is saying the U.S. will run the
minutes.
country of Venezuela and its oil reserves in the meantime. How do you see this playing out? What's next?
Well, I mean, we've seen this play out before. I guess this is one of the reasons that some people don't want us to know history, is so that we are doomed to repeat it, and seemingly that is what we are doing. Here's the problem. The biggest problem that I have is that it was illegal. Everything that this administration does is illegal. And so I don't know how you take the moral high ground when you are actually executing something in an unconstitutional way in the first place. And so if you had what you needed, which he truly believes that, I guess, then you just would have went to Congress and gotten us involved. But instead, you know, we're hearing leaks and reports that he talked to oil folk, but he didn't talk to Congress.
Right.
What kind of sense does that make? Because the last time I checked, whether or not you control an oil company does not entitle you to deciding whether or not the United States goes in. And when you look at the press conference that he held, he didn't talk about democracy. Now, I know there are a lot of people that are talking about this is good for the Venezuelan people because Maduro was a bad guy, but that's not why he did it. He has not cared about Venezuelans at all. Let me be clear about that part.
That's true.
And here's the receipt. The Enemy Aliens Act, which most of us had never heard of because it's from the 1700s, he invoked it specifically because of Venezuelans. He said, we are being attacked and invaded by Venezuelans. That was number one. Then the next thing that you know, CCOT, that's where he was sending Venezuelans. Remember the 60-minute episode that they did not want to air about how they were treating them, mistreating them at CCOT? That's where he sent Venezuelans. Then after that, he was illegally killing folk, saying that, oh, well, they're bringing drugs because it was supposedly about fentanyl, which is not where we get fentanyl, to be clear. So then he killed over 100 people with these bombs that he was dropping. And then when he went in to get Maduro, he killed even more Venezuelans. This ain't about Venezuelans. I get that there are people that don't like the leader. But guess what? There are a lot of people that don't like our leader. And regardless, somebody coming into the United States and grabbing our leader in the middle of the night and killing people in this country, I'm sure everybody would be outraged at them doing it that way.
Yes. It's the way that it's done. But nobody stops. It's the way that it was done.
Nobody's.
Oh, what is she going to stop? Man, she sure's attacking Trump big time. Just like, oh, yeah, I know, okay, yeah, sorry. I just can't believe how bad. Okay, so like you said, we had a long show yesterday. Like I had all the videos from yesterday, so I had to come on and do all the 4 big clips at the beginning. That was really good. So we'll do Cass's videos tonight, and then get the short videos in later. So have a good afternoon, and we'll see you around after dinner time or during dinner time. God bless y'all. Love all. Remember, please hit the like. Stay safe, stay strong, keep the faith, and never give up. So, thanks, Kay, and everybody, Lucy and Kim. Yep, Dave. All right, signing off, Chico do for a few hours here. Go get some lunch and see you soon. Yep, thanks, Kay.